everyone. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by the Alliance of Texas Energy Producers. I'm Jim Cardle. Well, the state legislature has finished up its regular session with many successes, according to political analysts, and the July 18th special session called by Governor Abbott is fast approaching. Of the 20 issues on the governor's agenda during the special session, about 20%, or two of the issues, and some of the more visible issues, are those started by State Representative Ron Simmons from House District 65 during the regular session. What is the prognosis for the special session, in particular the privacy and bathroom issue, as well as special needs school choice issues? We're pleased to be able to visit today with State Representative Ron Simmons from House District 65. Well, Representative Ron Simmons from House District 65, appreciate you coming in today.
Oh, Jim, it's always good to be with you.
As I mentioned in the intro, you're on the all-powerful Appropriations Committee, also the Transportation Committee, which is a big issue up in the DFW area. But let's just jump right in. I know you got a busy schedule and we got a lot to cover. First, I want to ask you, a lot of analysts have come to the conclusion that yet again you all had a conservative, successful, whether it's the budget or specific issue items, accomplishments this session. What are one or two of the things that you think? We had Sanctuary Cities Bill, we had the budget, we had Child Protective Services. Right. What are some of the things that you feel really good about having accomplished?
You mentioned some, I think, that are really important. First of all, Texas is a conservative state, Jim. Mm-hmm. And so our goal to pass a budget that's within population and inflation and without raising taxes or fees on our citizens, while a big task, is something that we were able to accomplish yet again. And then secondly, even though we saw a need in Child Protective Services, we were able to do that within that budgetary framework that we were able to do. And of course, our Sanctuary Cities Bill, there's a lot of talk about that right now, but all it really does is say, you know what, let's obey the laws that are on the books. And if you're not willing to obey the laws that are on the books, there's consequences as a result of that. We also were able to, a bill that I did, we're able to keep cities, our progressive cities, from adding additional cost on every single home or building that is built or remodeled. Extra costs up to $60 a square foot. There were some cities that were looking at doing that, and we passed a bill that would not allow those type of linkage fees.
So you're right, Austin was one of the efforts at the forefront of that additional,
right,
which would have
been.
And
it's a tax, is all it is.
I was going to ask, a constraint on construction and growth. Did you see that many places other than Austin that some of our viewers may or may not know, or was it just something barely getting started?
Well, Dallas was looking at it as well, and Austin was very close to recommending an ordinance of that effect. So the timing was very important. Okay,
let's real quick before I jump to your privacy and your school choice for special needs. Let's talk real quick, if I can get your insights on the budget. Most folks are familiar with the definition of a conservative budget these days being population growth plus inflation growth. You all have stuck to that pretty much by and large, but talk about the budget a little bit. There was some difference between the House and the Senate, although not very much, and then you all came to conclusion on it.
Well, what people have to understand, and what I try to tell my colleagues, is that the House and the Senate come up with budget proposals.
Okay.
They don't come up with budgets. They come up with budget proposals. And then those proposals are put together, and there's a conference committee of 5 members from each body that gets together to come up with the final proposal that goes back to us to vote on. So there's always only one budget, and people have a different way of looking at things, and that's okay. That's what democracy is all about. But we came together and we passed something that everybody pretty much was happy with. It was overwhelmingly passed, and it was something that we utilized some money in our rainy day fund for some of those one-time expenses that were important, but we didn't go into the rainy day fund for things that were ongoing operating expenses.
Big key conservative accomplishment there that folks have been focused on. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us again for this edition of Texas Insider TV with State Representative Ron Simmons from Carrollton and Louisville, House District 65. Let's turn to the special session coming up July 18th, if we can, Representative. Governor Abbott has proposed a total of 20 additional items, starting with the Texas Medical Board reauthorization, so we can have doctors licensed, I
Right.
guess, in the state.
That's important.
Fairly important. But a couple items on there are based on your legislation this last session. So congratulations on
Sure.
your efforts there.
Look forward
But
to
let's break it down and get into it and talk about it. First is your special needs school choice. If I can, let me get you to describe, because you are on the National Board of Autism
That's correct.
Awareness. Talk about briefly your personal experience, and then talk about the bill, because it's going to be a big issue this special
Right.
session.
Well, we have a son who's now 32, so he's an adult, but that's on the autism spectrum. And so we have our own personal experience of moving him through the education system. And what we found in our experience, and now what I've learned and experience of a lot of other people, is that while there are great intentions in our public school system, that in some situations the public school does not meet the needs of a particular student. Yet we are required by federal law that every single child is to be taught in the way in which they can learn. And if we can't do it within in that particular public school environment, that they should be given the opportunity to go find that. And what we're trying to do in this particular bill is to say, look, for these special needs students that for whatever reason it's not working out for them in the public school, let's give them an option, which means we'll give them some of the money that their parents have already, their taxes too, right? Some of the arguments on the other side is you're giving state money. Well, my opinion is there is no state money. There's only taxpayer money. The state's a steward, but they don't own that. And so we would allow them some options to find the best education for their child. Is that so hard for people to want to do? Are our public schools so frail that they're afraid of giving a few thousand kids the option? I don't think they are. It's not going to have a negative effect on our public school system. It's something that I know that the governor's supportive of. It's something that I know that even Speaker Straus is certainly a big supporter of public schools, but is okay with the idea of giving these types of people choices.
So talk about some of those criticisms. I think some of the numbers I've seen, we've got over 5 million school kids now in Texas out of 27 million Texans, and I think I saw something to the tune of about 400,000 may be classified as special needs or not. And the special needs today are defined with things that we didn't know of certainly 10 or 15 years ago.
That's right.
But the criticism of whether or not charter schools versus public schools versus private schools, the argument seems to be that only the public schools have the wherewithal to treat some of these special needs learning styles. Is that necessarily accurate?
No, it's not. Here's what I know, Jim. And this is from our own experience, if a special needs parent has a child that is getting a good education at an environment, let's say it's the local Louisville school, that parent's not going to move that child. Because when you have a special needs child, if something's working, believe me, you stay with it. And so it's the vast majority of our special needs students won't need to take advantage of that. But there is a percentage of people, and it's really it's not a particular type of special need, it's just where they happen to be in the education system that will need that. Other states that have done this, it's usually somewhere between 1% and 2% of their special needs population. So we're looking at somewhere between 4,000 to 6,000 kids.
Okay. Let's talk, before we get into the quote-unquote bathroom and privacy issues. This special session starts July 18th for 30 days. You all are going to have be drinking from a fire hydrant, essentially, with all these things coming forward. What is your outlook for an issue like the special needs school choice bill, or the outlook for being able to accomplish under the gun 20 issues?
Well, two separate questions there. Under the gun to do 20 issues, I think these are all issues that are not new to us. So therefore, we don't need to be educated on everything related to that. I think we can move them. And now, obviously, the Senate will move faster than we will. That's just, you can move 30 people faster than you can 150. But I think most of these issues were issues that we debated during the regular session. The debate hasn't changed, so I think we can get through those if we choose to. On something like special needs school choice, I think it can be handled within the bigger discussion on school finance reform, on if we decide we can get something done there, like the speaker has indicated he would like to, and I think the governor is okay with that as well, then I think that can be an element as a part of that. And I look forward to that happening.
Okay, very, very good. That's where we need to be looking then during this, because there will be some school finance, although we're not going to get to it. Let's jump to another issue that you have spearheaded during the regular session, and that is what's started in the Senate by and large, or got the majority of the media attention, Senator Colcourt's privacy bills, no men in bathrooms, the transgender issue, which is becoming an increasingly visible issue, particularly at the city and some of the county and in the schools. Your bill 2899, I believe, can be summarized more generally in that it avoids anti-discrimination efforts, but talk about what you specifically initiated during the regular session.
Well, first of all, it's House Bill 2899, which will have a different number in going to special session. But
Okay.
House Bill 2899 says what I believe, and I think most Texans believe. It's not the city's job or the school district's job to make law, right? It's the state's job.
Okay.
And in some cases, the federal government's job to make law. And House Bill 2899 simply says that unless there's a state or federal law that protects this particular situation, that a city or a school district or any political subdivision cannot have a special ordinance as it relates to bathrooms, showers, and locker rooms. So what it does is it just keeps in place what we've been doing for 150 years, and that's treat everybody with respect, realize that the 99.98% of the people, okay, like bathrooms of different genders, and then the point two, that if there's a challenge with that, that's handled on an individual basis in a most respectful and discretionary way. But we have to protect our citizens, our moms and our daughters, and we have to protect them, because even though it's not the intention, some of these non-discrimination ordinances can be misused by people that want to cause harm to others.
And let me ask you, because you may know, I've seen 2 or 3 or 4 minimum articles just this year about women being actually accosted in a restroom. The claim is that you mentioned the small percentage, but the claim is that this is a problem, in a solution in search of a problem, but yet it does happen out there, correct?
Well, here's what happens is, because of the way the term gender identity is defined by some of these cities, it says gender identity is what someone feels like at that particular time. So if someone wanted to claim, well, I feel like a person of the opposite sex right now, so I'm going to utilize that facility, but really it was for nefarious purposes, need to create a whole set of patchwork of ordinances all around the state. Now, what my bill does do, Jim, is it allows a fellow representative or a senator to file a bill and say, hey, we've got a problem. We need a new state law that handles this situation. They can do that, all right?
Okay.
Because that's the way these things are supposed to be handled.
And I know a lot of, including I think the speaker, some of your peers have been pressed on this during the short interim you've had, that it does need to be individualized, or that, for instance, school districts have, when needed, been able to address this issue. Is that what you're seeing?
Well, yes, school districts have. Some of them have addressed it in a way that is different than the way we've done things for the last 150 years. And so what we're trying to say is, over the last 150 years, if there was a problem, school districts handle it in a very good, respectful manner. We don't want a school district, for whatever reason, that maybe their leadership's more progressive or something like that, that says, hey, we think it ought to be, there ought to be girls in boys' showers and boys in girls' showers because everybody's the same. We're not there as a state. We're not there as a nation. obviously, because there's no federal law that allows that. So why would we allow that in Texas in a patchwork of different ordinances in these different cities? That's just not who we are.
And one final angle on this, some folks will, but most will not. This is all the result of a executive order from President Barack Obama to the nation's school districts. Now you, as a state legislator, are you seeing any other states try and address this, or is it something that Texas may in fact be leading the nation?
Well, North Carolina addressed it, and they addressed it, and then they came back and negotiated. Really, they negotiated something that ended up being just like my bill, House Bill 2899, that says, hey, if this is an issue, we're going to handle it at the state level. That directive from Obama has been rescinded, okay? So the school districts cannot stand behind that and say, well, the federal regulation said that we can do this. They cannot do that. Okay, and our Attorney General has said the same thing. And so we're trying to provide clarity in this situation, because what we found, again, is that there are some of our local jurisdictions that want to go beyond the protections that are provided in federal and state law, and we don't believe that's the appropriate place to do that.
Well, good luck with your efforts and initiative there. Speaking of going beyond, I don't want to go beyond your schedule today. Let me ask you one final thing. Sure. State Rep Ron Simmons from House District 65 up in Carrollton and Louisville. What have you been doing to get ready for the special session? Did you cancel summer vacations? Did you redouble your efforts at the business here the last week or two?
Well, what we've been working on is making sure that we're ready to go with our legislation. You know, my office will be handling 10% of the legislation on the governor's agenda, so it's a big lift for us. So we've been working on getting that ready, working with some of the centers of influence and the powers that be to make sure that's ready. My family understands that this is what we're called to do, and this is what we will do, and we'll be here as long as it takes.
Well, we appreciate your effort in that regard at the Pink Dome, as they call it. Appreciate you coming in today to visit with us.
Glad to be here, Jim. Thank you very much.
Folks, we appreciate you joining us for this edition of Texas Insider TV with State Representative Ron Simmons from House District 65, a member of the Texas Conservative Coalition, and as he mentioned, responsible for about 20% of what's going to be addressed. During the special session, we hope you'll come back and join us.
Thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you joining us for this edition of Texas Insider TV. Remember, you're either an insider or you're not. I'm Jim Cardle. Thanks for joining us.